Newsfirst, NEWSLINE with Faraz, Shauketaly.
And top of the evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live. We are, as usual, broadcasting live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Clambo. Now then, we have with us this evening our guest who is and has been for almost as long as we can remember the voice of the people. He has taken on cases, he has acted in the public interest on several occasions, and he has never been too shy to defend the people's position. He is, of course, today he's in Sri Lanka's cabinet. He's a member of parliament and he's the cabinet minister for water. He's right here with us, the very iconic Mr. Vasudeva Nanayakkara. Very good evening to you, Mr. Vasudeva.
Good evening. Thank you for all the nice things said about me.
Thank you. Well, I can't think of anyone better to say it about. So, thank you. Now then, Mr. Vasu, you have, as I said in the introduction, you have championed the people's interests for as long as we can all remember. Therefore, it is in that context that I ask you, are you happy with the current situation?
I can't say I'm happy. I can say that I am hopeful and I am full of anticipation of events that will unfold in the interest of the people. Already much has been done. Few of them I would like to recount, like the increments given to the plantation workers by the intervention of the government, again for the second time. Firstly, it was when Mahinda was the President.
Yeah.
Secondly, we have intervened in order to bring about fair prices for a number of goods, including rice, by entering into the wholesale market and accumulating stocks in order to be able to intervene in the market. We will not succumb to the pressures of the millers, the big millers, nor will we succumb to the pressure of the few large wholesalers and importers in the city. We will particularly be interested in seeing that fair prices prevail for the essential items of food principally.
Right. Is that the sum total of what you wanted to say about that?
That's about one or two things I want to say.
The main things.
Mainly, what I think the government has been doing for the last 1 year, or nearly 1 year, has been 70% or more in the interest of the country, national interest, the people's interest, and for equity in the country.
Now, I hear what you say, as I'm sure our viewers do, but some of these things, namely, let's say the sugar matter, in spite of the good intentions of the government to try and get the price down and filter right down up to even to the cup of plain tea, failed spectacularly.
Yes.
And we saw the one chairman being shifted sideways to some other place, and we'll come to that too. But there now appears that even Lanka Satosa incurred even more losses because they were forced to buy at one price and they sold at another price, and the difference had to be met obviously by the treasury, meaning the people. That is a situation that is far from acceptable to the people.
It is far from satisfactory, as you say. We ought to have intervened in order to requisition the sugar from the importers and distribute it ourselves
That's
at the
a
price.
super idea.
Yes, that was my position. And that's the position I advocated
I wish they'd followed your advocacy, because if they had, it would be one major item less for the government to contend with.
I agree. But the government as a whole had its own wisdom of keeping the markets happy without going into such aggressive steps which might have given bad messages to investors.
And of course, like the departure from process in the previous Yapalanista government to do with the issuance of treasury bonds, where one company and its main players were predominant in the making of money in that sort of scam, if you like, and it was very clear that one company and its beneficiaries were politically, shall we say, well connected
with the government.
With the government
the
of
then
that
government.
day, of the government of the day.
The Prime Minister being the principal figure.
Absolutely. And the Prime Minister acknowledged that he knew one of the shareholders, Mr. Arjun Aloysius, and he also says that he defended the position about Mr. Mahendran. I don't want this program to go on about the bond scam. But what I'm trying to say is that in that government we had one company or party that appeared to enjoy political state patronage. When it came to this sugar transaction, fortunately or unfortunately, whatever the facts are, the promoter of this one predominant company has connections to this government, has friendships, call it what you may. So you can see my point. My point is I'm coming from the public perception.
I get your point. But I want you to do justice by your statement by correctly referring to the many who imported. The many meaning many among the importers.
I know that you're a legal man, and the choice of my words was predominant.
Predominantly one person? No. Again, he or she is not the biggest importer of the sugar that was brought into the country at that time. Then it could have been imported by him. If he was the principal person, the others would have not known even until he has got the wealth in his pocket. But it was a general...
As a person who has advocated the public interest, can you, hand on heart, say that matter, the sugar matter, was devoid of political patronage?
I said the sugar that was brought at 25 cents tax, if not sold accordingly and correspondingly at that low price, all the sugar should have been requisitioned. If I was able to decide for the government, I would call for requisitioning and distributing it by the state.
Did you speak to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa?
We have spoken out wherever it was necessary. But they have their own cautious stepping in the situation. Cautious about markets, investors, private enterprise, etc., etc. Secondly, the sugar that was sold at a higher price than they ought to have done, or very much above the price that they have paid, has an excuse that they have put forward, which is that they had stocks in hand, large stocks in hand. They had to sell those stocks at the same price when they had paid a larger price for importing them previously. That was only an excuse. But these people who are the few importers of sugar, have made billions
Yes.
out of the sufferings of the people in this country.
Absolutely. And
So therefore I have no sympathy if I have the powers.
but you are a member of the cabinet.
Yeah.
And why can't you?
I can't prevail on the cabinet.
You can't prevail on the cabinet, but your words are respected, and surely they can see that all you're trying to do is to safeguard the collective image of the cabinet and your government.
Also the interest of the people, the poor people.
Yes.
All that being true, there is another side to the story, that is the interest the government has in impressing on investors that they will not seize the property of the private sector.
See.
So there is this conflict of considerations.
Are we now led to believe then, therefore, in light of everything you've said, that this 15 billion or whatever the money that was made by the others,
at the cost of the government,
at the cost of the
coffers.
government coffers, are we now to believe that that is just frittered away through the fingers and gone?
Yeah,
Gone for good?
it's gone, certainly gone. Our income of the
Potential.
government has been ultimately robbed.
Yeah.
Ultimately robbed.
By these whirlwind profits.
Yes.
But at least you agree.
But that's the way with this kind of so-called market mechanism. That's the way with the market mechanism.
Yes. I can see where you're going. Would you prefer if it was
State intervention.
Yes.
Intervention. And now we will not make the same mistake next time. That is
Good.
the more important thing.
Okay. Good. Now I want to ask you this then. Again, remember please, Mr. Vasudev Nanakara, that I am asking this question, posing it from a public interest perception. The port city, acknowledged by all as to be important and really excellent. But how excellent is it that the port city will be managed by a commission, and the commission will be appointed by the president? There is no criteria published as to who will be members of this commission, what their qualifications or expertise or anything of the sort. It appears that the president, acting solo, can do whatever he wants.
He will come to the cabinet
Right.
and have our opinion consulted before the appointments are made.
Right. Would it be more helpful if they were to publish as a criteria as to who could be
All that
in
will
the
come.
commission?
All that will follow.
Follow before this becomes,
Yeah,
the
before
bill
it becomes
an
law.
act.
Before it becomes final law.
Okay.
Who the persons who will be entrusted with
Yes.
the job and what their qualifications are, all that will be known.
The Constitution currently says that Parliament shall be the final arbiter on financial matters.
Yes.
Right. But when you examine the draft, the bill for the port city,
I haven't examined it.
no, but there's one section there that suggests that Parliament will be sent details for their information. What on earth does that mean? For their information, sorry, it should be for Parliament's consideration and debating and so on and so forth. But the way it's worded, it would appear that Parliament is merely reduced
I haven't examined the bill, but do you say that the Auditor General has no role in respect of the port city?
Well, what I'm saying is that
Auditor General is not excluded
yeah,
from the examination
Yeah.
of the interest of the government in respect of the port city.
section, when you do read it, Mr. Vasudeva, I suggest that you pay particular attention to sections 53 and 53.4. This is the part which, as a layman reading it, it raises my antenna and my concern, because it appears that Parliament is being reduced to some information service.
Parliament has to pass it.
Right.
Parliament
Because
has to
if
pass
you let
it.
these things there,
Parliament will not pass a bill
right,
which deprives it of its own powers to examine the finances of the country.
but then,
And that will be unlawful,
Yes.
unconstitutional.
but then, you know, as you said earlier,
They are a contradiction.
yes, but as you said earlier, you know, around about the sugar prices and so on, and you said, well, you know, you can't prevail on the cabinet. Do you think Parliament can prevail upon the Rajapaksas to
Rajapaksas are the creatures of the Parliament,
okay?
aren't they? So therefore I don't see how Parliament can stand in contradiction to Rajapaksas, or the Rajapaksas could stand in contradiction with the Parliament.
Okay. On that note, let's go for a short break and have a quick peek at the headlines for this evening's primetime news from News First. Don't go away. Do come back. This is Newsline Live with Vasudeva Nanayakkara.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
Welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Mr. Vasudeva Nanayakkara, Sri Lanka's Cabinet Minister for Water, and an iconic figure in the political field. Now then, Mr. Vasudeva Nanayakkara, the President's mandate, 6.9 million, so on and so forth, near two-thirds majority in Parliament. Does that mean that it gives the President sort of untrammeled powers to reduce Parliament to nothing more than a rubber stamp?
No. The Parliament has its own two-thirds majority, which is wielded by the Parliament,
Right,
together with the President.
right. And will you, as a politician whose name is not Rajapaksa, will you as a politician, will you stand up to safeguard what the Constitution envisages the role of Parliament to be?
I do not wish to claim that I am one who will stand up, but you will have to test me in the context.
I'm asking.
The fact that I say something now by way of a promise or a pledge has little meaning as for the future.
Accepting that it will
That I can be
sustain,
contradicted.
accepting
Then
that
I come to you next.
No. Accepting that you will convey to the public a sense of security and a sense of hope.
Yes, as far as I am concerned, I have stood up to the right of the Parliament to examine the finances of the country, the public enterprises, and even those private companies which are state-owned, which has more than 51%. You remember the 20th Amendment, which, when it was brought in the first instance,
Yes.
there were many clauses which went against several of the important issues related to finances being examined, institutions being examined by the Auditor General. We successfully had it removed. Then there was another clause which was about the citizenship matter,
Yes.
about which we took up a stand. What you asked me was whether I would take up a stand.
Indeed.
We took up a stand.
Yes.
And that stand resulted in Honorable Ali Sabri, the Minister of Justice, having to say in the winding up speech, the President met the members of the Cabinet who didn't agree with this, and he had pledged to have it included in the new Constitution, and this will happen within a year.
The international, yes, sorry.
So the point I'm making is, we have stood up and we will stand up for what we think in our own conscience as just and fair.
And
from the standpoint
Yeah.
of the large masses, the public, and the national interest.
And where did you stand when you saw this government choose to issue a diktat that people, confirmed COVID cases, would have to be cremated and not buried at the beginning?
I had a position. I went to the extent of finding through my geologist what areas in the country are suited for burial, which areas have no water levels in a shallow elevation, not elevation, shallow depth. And I have submitted those to the government in order to consider burial as an alternative.
Don't you think that was rather inconvenient to the community that would normally have only burial?
It was. I may not agree with the belief of my friend who is a Muslim about sticking to the burial right at a time of a pandemic.
Accepting that the World Health Organization said it was all
no
right.
matter what, at the time of a pandemic, we are going through such stress that we need not, if I was I can't say that because I am not, if I was the one who was concerned or who was the victim of the situation, I would give in. I had my comrade Jabbar from Pothuil, who came and said, I'm advocating burial not being compulsory for Muslims in a situation like this. He is a member of our central committee. So I didn't take that as the last word. I had my friend Ataullah who said, no, we must bury. So I have taken up the position, we must find a way that they should be able to bury.
Do you agree that it caused Sri Lanka some damage in terms of international opinion?
I would forget the damages. I would like to stick to the principle. Damage or no damage.
And being that the pandemic comes first?
No. The principle is that we should have considered burial as an option, as an alternative. Whether it helps us to gain in the international fora or not, that's not a consideration.
Can I, we've got about 4 minutes left. Can I ask you this? Why is there this sort of paranoia about addressing claims from the international community, however lopsided or not, or without evidence or anything of the sort? What's the problem? What is the paranoia about addressing an issue to check to see if there were any transgressions during the fight against the LTT?
Well, we must have all evidence before us.
Yes, I know.
Without evidence.
But to find evidence, you need an investigation.
To start an investigation, the evidence must be forthcoming. The forthcoming evidence that we have demanded are the gas dispatches from here to the unsubstantiated allegations made by that report to the High Commissioner.
UN High Commissioner.
UN High Commissioner. I can't remember the name of the person who was responsible for that report, who said, we will not disclose the witnesses until 20 years. How can we ever think of an investigation in the teeth of that kind of arrogant refusal?
But there were all this footage and so on, where the
What footage?
various footage from different organizations that came
You can
about.
have footages of videos that has little meaning without substantive evidence. You know about
surely,
what evidence is.
Yes, but surely it could have had an internal investigation.
We are having investigations. Even now we have ongoing investigations. But those are all domestic investigations.
Yes, but the UN are never happy.
UN is paranoid.
Yes, but why?
Because they have found this government not their faithful, obedient servant of the West.
Right.
That's why they are.
Is that it?
Paranoid.
Is that
yes.
why?
Yes. We are not their faithful, obedient servant. like what Mangala Samarveera was, who was always prepared to sign anything without looking at it.
Is it also because of Sri Lanka's leaning towards China?
There is no leaning towards China. Then we won't have dealings with India. India and China are the main contenders in this
Yes, but
South Asian
in
Sea.
terms of development and so on,
Oh, no,
China is
always
our preferred partner currently.
development is always a part of capital investment. He who can bring capital investment
Is well.
without strings attached is our friend, as much as our neighbor is our friend and even our relative.
India.
India.
And so you don't see, how will this matter of the UN be resolved?
Can I remind you that there was no China-US contest for global hegemony 20, 30 years back in 1970. You remember the 1970 government
Yes,
was called a communist government,
yes.
and the Western Bloc did everything they could in order to bring down that government, bring about fissures in the government, break up of that government. These are well-known facts. Then there was no China seeking global hegemony. At that time there was no China-Sri Lanka relationship over and above the relationship with India. Well, of course, India then was not in the
superpower league.
in the superpower league, like now they are.
What is your outlook for the future? Bright?
Well, we need to have the vaccination given and finished, and then we are quite safe.
Have you had yours?
I have it. First dose.
First one.
Yeah.
And will we have enough to do the second?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Given date. Then, thereafter, we can go into stepping up our economic activity to a high gear with a proper plan, national plan for the economy, linking it up with the education programs and training programs in the tertiary education sector, and also keeping our health expenditure sufficiently high in order to keep a very healthy nation.
Vasudevan Nanakara, thank you very much for being on Newsline Live, and it's now time for the primetime news from News First. Take care, have a great evening, and God bless you.